My brother had enlisted, and he told me about the Navy. He said the Navy is great. So I gave strong consideration of it, and that's what I did. I went to Boston to enlist, and it was in the United States Post Office in Boston, Mass. There was about 30 guys in that room, and it was chaos in there. There was a lot of noise, and a yeoman opened the door. He says, "Anybody here can type?" Now, this is 1942, and I hadn't typed for 10 years, but I remembered that I could type. A semi, S, L, D, K, F, K, G, A. I says, "I can type." So he put me to work typing 3x5 cards. At the end of the day, he says, "I'm going to give you what they call in the Navy a chit," which is a pass. He said, "You're going to be a yeoman, and you can go home, and you can take the train and go home, and you'll get an order in 2 weeks, and then you'll know where you're going to be assigned." In 2 weeks, I was assigned to Casco Bay, Portland, Maine. But the interesting thing about this whole thing is I never went to boot camp. I have to explain that. Apparently, for some reason or other, I must have slipped through the groove because I didn't go through boot camp. So I had a little reservations about what was going to happen when I got over there. I sat in the captain's office, typed in incoming mail, outgoing mail, and I was a little dubious about whether the captain had ever talked to me about the Navy because I didn't know a thing about the Navy. But that lasted while I was there. I started as a yeoman, and I was discharged as a yeoman 3rd class. The routine that we had on Casco Bay, Portland, Maine was we took drafts from Great Lakes. They call them where you learn to become a sailor, and we sent them out what they call tin cans, which were destroyers. And those destroyers went overseas with either supplies or servicemen, and that was the purpose of being in what they call the Navy Receiving Station. That was the purpose of our being there. Great Diamond Island was the offshoot of Portland, Maine, and the Army had a base there. So they took a portion of that and made a Navy Receiving Station with all the buildings and everything else. So that's where our barracks are located. So my experience was taking a motor launch from the Navy Receiving Station over to Portland Pier and back. Had a few experiences there where you could take weekends, and when the ships came in on Liberty, the boys lived it up. So a lot of them had to be carried into their boat once in a while, but they were there and it was right for them. They were there, they had to have relaxation, and they did. So it was a good thing for them. I got married after a year being in the service. We got married in June 17th, 1943, was a year later. And on Liberty, I was able to travel about 15 hours, which means 7 or 8 hours to Boston and 7 or 8 hours up to Rutland. But I traveled for free because I had a Navy uniform on. Since I've grown up, somebody asked me, "What's the secret of growing old?" And I says, "Keep breathing." Now, the other thing is, I have a little poem here which has a lot to do with fancy living, and I'll read it to you. It says, "A thing that goes the farthest toward making life worthwhile, that costs the least and does the most, is a pleasant smile. The smile that bubbles from a heart that loves its fellow men will drive away the clouds of gloom and coax the sun again. It's full of goodness and worth. It's with genial kindness blend, and it's worth $1 million, and it doesn't cost a cent."